Hello. I want you to think for a moment. When was the last time that you entered a bank? Was it to make a deposit, or do you use an app for that? Was it to apply for a loan? But there's also an app for that now, too. Chances are, if you're part of the ever-growing population that never enters a real bank, there isn't a real person verifying your identity anymore. There isn't a clerk or a teller that you have to go talk to. Now there are passwords. Studies show that the passwords that we use are no longer a viable security method on their own, because people are not using secure passwords, and two-factor authentication is much more secure. According to an October 2017 article in Pcworld by Michael ANSALDO, the strongest passwords are long, random strings of characters, and you should use a different one for each site you access. The main problem with this is that people are not willing to go through the process of creating and storing secure passwords. According to Lisa Eadicicco discussing the problem in her September 25th issue of Time magazine, she states that the biggest hurdle with password security may be complacency. We've all gotten comfortable with text-based and number-based identity verification. So if people are truly complacent about password security, what can be done to remedy the problem? The answer lies in making security even easier than having insecure passwords, a password manager. There are many password managers available, ranging in price, of course. The one pictured here is called LastPass and is one of the paid options. There are free versions available from big-name companies such as Google, Apple, and even Microsoft. The beauty of a password manager is that it removes a lot of the burden from the user and places it in the hands of the service, such as the one shown here. At a minimum, password managers are going to provide password storage, password generation, and a master password. Password storage is, in a word, storage. You give the password to a website to the password manager, and it will store it for you. On its own, this isn't revolutionary. Browsers such as Google Chrome and Firefox have been able to do this for years. But when you combine it with password generation, it really shines. Password generation is when the password manager will create a very strong password for you. It's essentially a long string of gibberish with numbers, letters, and symbols. Because it's so long and complex, you shouldn't be able to remember this password, but the password manager can, which is why password storage is important. The master password is what ties these two functions together. It is the only password that you will have to remember, and the password manager will never know. You put this password in any time that a site would normally ask you for a password, and the password manager takes over for you if you enter the correct master password. Even with the best of password managers, the master password still represents a great weakness, both in concept and implementation. The master password can be cracked in the same way that any other normal password can. As mentioned in the July 2015 Communications of the AMC article, Passwords and the Evolution of Imperfect Authentication, even the strongest passwords are still static secrets that can be replayed and are equally vulnerable to phishing, theft, and eavesdropping. Mandating stronger passwords does nothing to increase security against such attacks. In other words, if your master password, is stolen from you, the attacker will have access to every site that you have stored in the password manager. This is a definite problem. And so enters the third and final piece of the security puzzle, two-factor authentication. What is TFA exactly? While it may sound complicated at first, it is surprisingly simple to explain once you understand what the factor in TFA is. Any method of authenticating is a factor, and the most common types of factors are something you know, something you have, and something you are. Something you know is anything that you alone have knowledge of, such as a password. Something you have is something that you physically need to have access to in order to authenticate. A good example of this is becoming the Google Authenticator application for smartphones or tablets. It works by sending a randomly generated string of 6 numbers to your phone when you want to access a website. If you do not physically have your phone on you, you won't be able to provide the code or log in. Something you are is part of your body that is unique to you, such as a fingerprint, a retinal scan, or a facial map. It's also known as biometrics and is by far the most secure method of authenticating. As Lisa Eadicicco says in the Time magazine article, Equifax and the Perils of Password Protection, it's a lot harder for people to steal your identity if they have to physically recreate it. Now that we know what a factor is, two-factor authentication should make more sense. Putting two factors together at the same time. The example I mentioned with Google Authenticator is a common place to see this. You have to not only have the code given to you by the device, but you also have to know your password. That's something you have and something you know. Another common example is modern smartphones. Many of them are coming built in with fingerprint readers. And in order to buy something from a store on these devices, you'll not only need to know your password, but provide your fingerprint to prove that you are who you say you are. That's something you know and something you are. The final example, which is worth noting, is that you can combine biometrics with a password manager. This is an excellent solution for managing websites or applications that do not yet support biometric security, which is a large number. Using this method, the password manager will store your passwords, still generated in random strings, and still have a master password that you have to provide to access. The major bonuses that you get from adding biometrics on top of this is that you not only need to know your master password, but provide something to physically prove you are who you say you are. In conclusion, we talked about how passwords are no longer a viable security method on their own because people are not using secure, strong passwords, and two-factor authentication is much more secure. Passwords are no longer viable on their own because people have grown complacent with the system and do not create secure passwords. Password managers and two-factor authentication provide a much greater form of security while alleviating the burden from the user. I hope that you have gained some knowledge that you can use to keep yourself safe in today's crazy world of internet security. With the many forms of password managers available to you, I hope that you feel comfortable considering them. Thank you for your time and have a great day.